Hello.
Hello, Fred.
You guys must have gotten here literally a minute ago because I just had another meeting and then I ran out to get some water and
Quite literally.
Just joined.
very, very good. Hello, Mark. You made it.
Check it out. It mixes so easy. I don't even really need to use the spoon to mix it. I mean, legitimately. Do you see how well this is mixing, my friend? It doesn't go to the bottom. It mixes with the water perfectly. And it makes
Who's listening to a cooking show? That's a bit of a bonus.
Absolutely.
That was pretty cool. So, well, I guess we'll wait a few more minutes for a few more people. But Jury and Raphael, one of the things we've been discussing over the last two weekly meetings will come up, and that is how we can make different bindings of documents. I had a meeting with Valentina right before this where she had a great sentence, but I'm going to save that sentence until there's a few more people in here. Anyway, let me see if I can do some digging. So I'm looking at you, Mark. Actually, I'm looking at the background, trying to figure out where you are. I'm guessing West Coast, California?
Yeah.
Northern?
I'm in a sunroom. It's early in the morning. People are sleeping here, and I'm in Half Moon Bay, California. Not too far from you, Jamie.
I would have guessed Berkeley, but Half Moon Bay makes a lot of sense. Hey, Todd's
I'm
here
actually
too.
in Berkeley.
Wonderful.
Of course you are.
Sorry, what did you say, Jamie? I didn't hear.
Oh, I said I'm actually in Berkeley.
Oh, you are?
So not too far from Mark.
That's really cool. Hang on, I'm just going to have to send out invitations to people whose links didn't work. 1 second. Trying another one now. Vint just had problems coming in. Yeah, I live in Berkeley when I'm in the Bay Area. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place. So Vince just had he had a problem with the link, so we'll give him a minute. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I miss the whole Northern California Bay Area vibe, except for, the politics further in and the earthquakes. Other than those two things. Although, of course, at least one of them's getting better, right?
We don't have earthquakes. We have fires.
Oh yeah, the fires, of course. Yeah, I forgot about those. So let's see if Vint can get in with the new invitation link I just sent. What? Authorized. Okay, I'm trying to, Vint is saying authorized attendees only. How can that possibly? That's weird. Sorry about this, everyone. I can't really start without him. Well, anyway, we're waiting for Vint for the community, and this is being recorded. Jamie and Mark and Todd, would you mind spending a few seconds introducing yourselves? I'm lucky enough to know you, but not everyone does. Shall we go alphabetically and start with you, Jamie, maybe?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm not on camera because like Mark said, it's early in the morning in the West Coast. But my name is Jamie. I'm the executive director of the Society Library. And the Society Library is a nonprofit organization that extracts arguments, claims, and evidence from various forms of media to construct databases which articulate all of the argumentation from all points of view on really complex social and political issues. And what I'm contributing as our entry to the future of text, hopefully, we've actually already published an article about it. It's called a concept called a web-based conceptual portmanteau, where the node structure where we display a claim in the Society Library version currently is actually can pack media to express one claim. So one claim can be expressed in multiple versions of the same linguistic register, as well as different linguistic registers. We can attach images and videos, references. We can do much more to like equations and that sort of thing. So essentially, like portmanteau is when you like kind of seemingly physically combine words to create a new, more precise word. And what we're doing is we're combining all this kind of media to provide a more precise educational expression of a specific claim. So that's what we're adding. And that's who I am. So hi, everyone.
Thank you. That was very worthwhile. And just to repeat for Bint, your yeah, could you repeat Society Library, just like a 20-second recap? Do you mind?
Got it. Thanks. There was something really weird about trying to get in this morning. It said you're an unauthorized attendee, go away. And it only worked after I was able to explicitly enter the passcode of the URL. Didn't work.
Bizarre. But we're glad you're here. Just Mark and Todd are going to briefly introduce themselves, and then we actually have a bit of an agenda for today. So,
Right.
Mark.
Sorry, I was thinking, I'm surprised Vint doesn't have a sort of super user override for these sort of things. Anywho, my background, I'm recently in academia, but I've been playing around with sort of information and text structure for ages. First a naval signals officer, and then doing some web startup in the 90s, and then basically as a metadata information emergency plumber. And then I recently came back and read a master's and did a PhD in web science. And my area of interest is sustaining knowledge, like organizational knowledge in hypertext. In a nutshell, what do you do with a company handbook when you can't print it anymore? And that's probably it.
Thank you. And other Graham, Mark Graham.
Oh, hi. Hey, yeah, I'm Mark Graham. I manage the Wayback Machine at the Internet Archive, and archive a little more than 1 billion URLs a day. And I also manage a project we refer to as Turn All References Blue. The goal basically is to add links to existing and new documents to help make them more useful. We're doing that at scale. We've added links to more than 1 million articles on Wikipedia. Wikipedia articles pointing to books and academic papers, and we've edited more than 20 million URLs in Wikipedia articles. We're running our software in about 80 to one language editions right now. More broadly, we're exploring a whole range of ways to annotate and edit documents. The two ways that you can modify a document is you can edit it, or you can add some metadata to it. And an example of the latter would be work that we did to a modified version of a PDF.js. It's a PDF reader, and also the Hypothesis annotation software client running on a server, so that we could annotate the Mueller report. After we first republished the Mueller report as a new EPUB version with more than 700 links in it, so that's an extant document which can be distributed. Then we did the same trick by annotating a PDF document of the Mueller report, such that one doesn't have to physically have that particular edited file, but rather can view a annotated version of that file and still benefit from the additional links that we added to that. Interesting footnote is that the Mueller report is an example of a document with a couple thousand footnotes, where over time, what's at the end of those footnotes, if they're links, changes. And more things can be linked via footnotes because the underlying documents are becoming available. New documents were released by the Justice Department of the United States just this past week, for example.
Thanks, Mark. Todd, do you want to say briefly where you are or who you are?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Todd Carpenter. I'm the Executive Director of NISO. That's the National Information Standards Organization of the US. We develop technical standards for publishers, libraries, and software providers. Specifically related to the Future of Text project, we have several related activities. We just launched a project called Content Profiles Linked Data, which is a markup structure that combines XML production files with JSON as a standard. There is also work taking place within ISO that we also represent US interests to, and I'm an expert on, for using semantic overlays of text, the creation of textual documents, and exploring ways in which software, writing, editing software, as well as production processes can include semantic enriched information, either in metadata or in semantic links. Those are just two elements of the kind of things that we do. We're also deeply involved in identifiers of various sorts and metadata standards.
Thank you. And yeah, that's great for the new guys. Sorry for the confusion earlier, Mark Anderson. I meant Mark Graham because he's new. We know you, but it was nice to have a repeat of who you are. Obviously, my closest physical collaborator here in the same country. But it's really interesting to hear Mark and Todd talk about what you're talking about, because on the agenda today, one of the things that I'd like to discuss is I just had a meeting with Valentina, who some of you know, who's helping with PR. She's a good friend. Couldn't make it for this meeting, unfortunately. And I was whining and moaning about the whole visual meta, which I think all of you know at least a little bit about. And I had such a problem because I want to write an article, and Vint, I was going to invite you to join me in this article. And in order to write why visual meta is important, I'd first have to define why a document is important. Then I'd have to define and write why interactivity is important. And these are so bleedingly obvious things to me and to this choir, so to speak, that I'm talking to now, I know. And then finally, the whole robustness, why that's so important. And I just had such a stress thing of why isn't this clear? And she said, well, it's probably because people think this is what's happening. And then she said, what I think is interesting, he said, we are not making the documents of the future. That was a bit of a revelation to hear it presented in that way. So what I would really like to do with our next Future of Text book is to use as many different ways of really getting to grips with interactivity for the book. And one of the things we've discussed in our weekly calls, particularly with Raphael, Peter, and Mark and Jury, is the idea that a PDF, and let's just consider PDF being a substrate for the thing, not what it can be done, but the thing that is passed around, that it's a binding, and I'm using your term, Vint, binding, you know, how things are bound together, both as a, you know, like a book, and also like how we are bound by this call, for example. So we can then really go to town with this, because one thing that people have rightly complained about is the book has a table of contents, and that's ridiculous. Shouldn't be one table of contents. It's a huge book. You should be able to choose how you want to see the articles organized. That's something that this can easily handle. We just have to build the interaction for it. Do you want to see the book organized by author, first name or last name? Sure. Titles, how about the shortest articles first? Or by these keywords, whatever it might be. This is the kind of stuff I think we have to do in order to honestly say that we're working with the future of text. Because currently, you know, I'm sure most of you have seen it, but you know, it is a hefty book. And I am really, really scared of just having things on the web or digital, because it will disappear. I mean, just if you have a chance, ask Mark Anderson someday, who's been going through the ACM archives for the hypertext conferences. just getting that stuff organized is a pain. So anyway, we should make a more interactively exciting way to produce the book, right?
Sorry, yes, but yes, and at the same time, the links don't even work in the book. So I think, basics first. I bought the book. I mean, I downloaded the book and put it on my iPad, and I couldn't click on the footnotes.
Yeah, that is a limitation of PDF. When I made the book originally in InDesign. No, not inherently in PDF as such. Absolutely not. Of course not.
Thank you.
Yeah, but when the workflow.
But I want to say, but why were you even talking about PDF? It's fine. You can talk about PDF if you want to, but let's talk about the multiple dimensions of the emergent book and embrace as many of them as we can. And in all cases, as we explore these new dimensions, we should just also take care of the basics.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. But just to explain how flawed the workflow, at least
Sure.
as I experienced it, was. Because there were a lot of typographers and design people part of the first volume of the book, the look of it was really, really important. So many, should we indent here and should we do this there and type and all of that stuff. So we got that down, that was fine. But because we then built it in InDesign, when you choose to export, you can export it as an interactive book or as a printed book. And considering that we were making a printed book and a PDF book, the workflow from Adobe, the inventors of PDF, made those links not work. And I had to choose where to put my resources and what to try to fix. And there were a lot of things that had to be fixed. Putting it into, anyway, the fact that the links don't work as clickable things is very strange. When you open it up in Reader, most of them do work again because Reader parses it, but not all the readers do. So yeah, this goes back to what Valentina said earlier today. We are not building the documents of the future. This is a great example of where that's absolutely right.
Actually, it's been, I wonder if I could interject two things, a question from Mark Graham and an observation about your and Valentina's document to the future. So Mark, a question for you has to do with all of that additional linking. Is that done manually? On Wikipedia, for example, those are human beings who are doing it, or is there something automated about it?
The work we're doing at scale, when we talk about millions, that's done with software, and it's all open source. I can share it with you, but we always start with experiments. And I mean, I've got a test rig right now where I'm experimenting with a variety of parsing methodologies. There's tools like GrowBid, for example, is very popular. There's another one called AnyStyle, publicly AnyStyle.io. And so, yeah, I'm experiment by hand and with one-off tools, and then we get something to a level of quality where we feel comfortable, and then we try to scale it. The only things we've scaled so far at this time are the two use cases are one, the discovery of dead links or links that can otherwise be improved. And the second is a reference to external resources, which is accessible at this time through the Internet Archive. Obviously, we can also do Google Books as another use case of a target URL.
Just for clarity,
Yeah.
Is it the case that if there is a URL found in the reference, and it turns out that you happen to have picked that reference and it's been mapped into the archive, that's the automated thing? Okay.
Correct.
You're not,
Correct.
You're not doing scanning of the text and then figuring out what references should be added to, improve the scope of the document.
Not based on, say, identification of concepts or terms and adding whole new references. No, we're not doing that. On the one hand, I want to say we are experimenting with some other kind of things, and I just did something a couple nights ago, which is, and this is, I'm going to focus just a little bit on Wikipedia because Wikipedia is just such a rich test bed and sandbox. You can read and write to it, which is wonderful, and there's a lot of good data there. There's a lot of books represented in Wikipedia, right? There are Wikipedia articles, as they're referred to, about books. There's a wonderful book. It's called The Burning of Books. that came out recently, and it's got a few hundred references in it. If you go to the Wikipedia article about the book, The Burning of Books, which is about, by the way, the history of the destruction of knowledge, there's very, very few external links there. So if you're a scholar or even just an armchair activist and researcher, and you want to go a little deeper, you still have to do your own Googling, basically, et cetera. So what I did was I parsed the bibliography of that book using software. And then I pattern matched that against archive.org. I could have pattern matched it against Google Books. I think I'll do that as well. I found 28 books that we had already digitized that were referenced in that book. And then I added a brand new section to this Wikipedia article called Books Cited, or Works Cited in this book, and populated them with 28 references to these 28 different books. The basic idea is, and we've got about 15 of these little experiments going on where we're trying to say, how can we make books more useful? Yeah, that's basically, how can we help people explore a topic of interest? How can we address fundamental issues of ephemerality and fragility? I'm sure all of you saw the new report that Zittrain et al. Came out with this week about the 2.2 million URLs referenced in New York Times articles, and how, over time, a linear progression of them had gone dead. As basically a redux of their work of 10 years ago with Lessig about Supreme Court opinions. So anyway, I could go on, but I don't want to monopolize the meeting.
Well, thank you. It occurs, you remember John McCarthy's famous observation that 100 years from now they'll be saying, did you know that 100 years ago they didn't have books that talk to each other? And so the idea that, we have these referencing systems that count how many references to a particular article, but what would be interesting would be when you're reading one of the other articles, having a link back so that the article that it's referring to knows that it has been referred to, and maintaining an archive of that information would be interesting. The question for Freud has to do with the phrase documents of the future. In a sense, every time we create a document now, we are creating a document for the future because it will be in the future's past. And so whether we like it or not, we're creating objects that we hope will be available in the future, except for the concern that Mark and the rest of you have, and me too, is that the evaporation of digital content may mean that you aren't creating something for the future because it won't be there. So we all have concerns about how to avoid that problem. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on, but thank you very much, Mark, for summarizing what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, so the reason I'm bringing it up is, these monthly meetings vary very much what we're talking about. And one thing we're going to be doing soon, well, we've already launched the student competition, so we have to figure out how to promote the student competition. This is useful both to get younger minds to think about the future of text, but also to get it through teachers' hands so they hear about this. Rather, it's an insidious way, in a fun way, to promote the book, promoting people's opportunity to be a part of it. And also we're thinking maybe we should actually offer a prize like an iPad or something this time, because it will make it much more likely that students will want to write. But of course, are we then getting the right kind of students? Maybe not, but it's a way of, I'll use that fun word again, insidiously getting a larger pool. Because if someone here, oh, I can win an iPad, maybe then they will actually pay attention to what we're doing and become interested. So we also have to look at how to promote the book in general, inviting new contributors to the second volume. The more they can find out about how well the first book will obviously help. So if anyone has any promotion ideas that would be valuable, we'll also be doing that in our community and by email, of course.
Here's a crazy thought, Code. I don't know if we could do this, but what would happen if we went to the New York Times bestseller list editor, whoever that is, and asked if we tell them what we're trying, or her, what we're trying to do, and see whether the winner could get, a blurb in the New York Times book section or something like that.
Yeah, and by we, I hope you mean you.
Well, I'm not sure that I don't have any special connection with the New York Times book list, but I suppose I could ask.
Well, it would be nice to leverage the people of note whom we already have, Venture having written the foreword and being a very firm part of this community. But because also, like the notion of the first edition, like Mark rightly brought up, there are issues like some of the links don't work. There are a lot of things, and this book, not to be crying too much here, but I made the whole book myself, and it's 1 million characters. And for the next book, I need help. I need help to make sure that shit like that doesn't happen. I mean, pardon my words. So as a community, there are different things we can do. And one of the time wasting things for me is the promotion. So if everybody promotes a little bit within their community, that means I can spend more time hacking away.
Okay, so I can help promote it. Is there something that you can point me to? The
Well,
student competition you referenced, is it written up yet?
I'm trying not to look at Raphael too much when I give you the URL, but if you have a look at Future Text Publishing, I'll put it in the chat here as well.
Got it, I got it. By the way, we can't chat with each other here. I'm not sure if that's something was turned off in the Zoom, so I'm just noting a point of reference.
Oh.
And to complement Frode on what he's saying, we're obviously here to help both promote and to get some of the work off your shoulders. And one of the things that I've been talking to Frode with is creating an environment where it would serve as an introduction to both the Future of Text, the book, the symposium, and the community, so that people would go to this place and know everything there is to know about it. So I would say that is under planning and construction.
Yeah,
great.
We need a better site, and we are working on it. I've done some basic things just to get Raphael to go in and clean up the rest of it.
Beautiful.
It's Vint. I have an idea for a stunt. You know what an NFT is?
Yeah.
Oh, and we have a PDF of the book. Why don't we put it up as an NFT and I'll buy it for some amount of money, like $10,000 or something. And we might actually get some visibility as a result.
That's interesting. Yeah,
I think NFT is crazy, but they have one interesting property about the whole concept is that, at least one version of it, is that once the object has been installed in this blockchain, further transactions that involve value have a portion going to the author of the object, which is not what happens today in paintings. For example, you sell it once and then whoever gets it owns all of it. It's like copyright transfer. I own everything, you don't get anything anymore after that. And so it has this interesting residual value. It's a little bit like the way the film industry generate and pays, actors for repeat use of something like reruns on the television. So, so there is an interesting feature there, but in terms of a stunt of some kind to draw attention to the book, maybe we should put it up as an NFT.
I think that's
we would probably have to make it as an animated GIF to make it more appealing as an NFT.
Well, we do actually have a 24-second video of the book. It's on the webpage on the download. I filmed myself scrolling through the book. So if you stop, the entire book is there. It's just frame by frame. So it is kind of an animated GIF, just as the worst possible interaction you could possibly have.
Well, I don't know how to do how to install something into an NFT. I don't know where they are or how many there are or which ones are most visible, which is the one that had the $69 million nuts painting.
I'll look into that. That's definitely a good idea. Yeah, Mark, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just very quickly, just say if anyone wanted to, I know Frode's got a sort of site that explains visual meta, but if you want to cite it, I put up some BibTeX in the sidebar. And for the other Mark, part of the sort of reference to PDS is another side of this, in that it's pretty much where academia is stuck at the moment. So one of the things we're talking about as well is how we bridge from the hole we're in at the moment to the glorious sunny uplands beyond.
We just do it. I mean, I'm sorry, it's like, why bother? If people are stuck, then, just either push them out of that hole or pull them into some other place. The other thing too is, I'm sorry, I have to challenge that statement about academia being stuck. Some dimensions of academia being stuck. There's other dimensions that are fully embraced HTML and a variety of other formats. So. Yeah. Also, I just want to say, in terms of promotion, has this been promoted? I don't know. I can do my own research, but the future of the Read 2 list, for example, the license list. There's a whole variety of mailing lists that various stuff are on, but certainly the ones that I'm on, I can share this there. I'm reminded, at the Internet Archive, we hosted a series of conferences with Peter Brantley, on the future of the book. And we did that for many years. We had wonderful presenters that kind of morphed into our October events. But regardless, there's a large community of people that are actively engaged in conversations. Bob Stein, for example, being one of them, on the future of book, that has a pretty active mailing list associated with that. So we can get the word out.
Yeah, that would be great. And to continue that discussion, Jerry.
Yeah, I just got two ideas, suggestions. One, I put into the link. That's going to be at the first meeting, Get Fission. We're doing this sort of web native stuff, and lots of people from the Tools of Thought space. These are all people who really care about permanence, because they really talk about personal knowledge management. The number one criteria that it will be there for me for my lifetime. So there's the real communities, active communities who are in there. And also there's the whole network thinking thing, which is blowing up now. The original structure and collaboration is blossoming. And I thought that we could have perhaps a competition. And the other thing is that the meeting, point of the meeting, that everybody is really committed to make all these personal knowledge management things in a way interoperable, which means because people are committed to the interoperability, many people use Markdown as a lingua franca, whatever. That's the whole point of these discussions. But the point is, we could have a competition saying, well, any tool for talk vendor or people or communities, they could contribute, or they could take the incoming text as things gather and do something with it themselves. And then we can have a whole competition of, people did this, people did that. And that could actually take off some of the burden from your editing, and also guaranteeing that it will be in a format that will be easy to distribute. There will be so many. So this is just an idea. And I definitely, anybody interested in this, you should really come to this Fission, or you can watch it, because it's going to be an amazing thing that really people start from the ground up building up this really knowledge sharing thing. Yeah,
I will be presenting there next week, Friday. It's 2 a.m. for me, but that means it's reasonable for Americans to watch it. So that is a very good community, and you introduced it to me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So I think it's really worth. I just want you, because if you're going to be there next Friday, then there's no rush. You can talk to them next Friday. That's great. I didn't know about that, so I'm glad you're coming.
Yeah,
so Codex will be there. Ian, Neil, I will be there. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I apologize. Where is there? I'm looking at the.
Oh, it's Fission, which is a startup.
Got it.
Sort of web native stuff. And the second link is actually the Lumio thing, where you can read about it and actually sign up.
Can you put some links in the chat for that, please, Jerry?
I put it in the chat.
Oh, you did. Okay.
This is different. This is different than the Tools for Thought on May 27th.
No, this is Tools for Thought, May 27th, tomorrow. That's going to be this Fission meeting.
Thank you.
This is the regular weekly tech talk or chat, which is really, normally it's about Fission, but everybody's interested in Fission because it gives you a kind of web native storage. So you can have your sort of your iCloud, which runs in your browser, that kind of stuff. So,
great.
Please come along, because it's going to be quite amazing. Yeah.
So Raphael.
Yes. So in that salon, Frode, that you went to, that we talked about information, A person messaged me after the salon. Her name is Jessica Canepa. She works at GitHub. And she told me about this community called Write the Docs, and I will send the link in the chat. And it's basically the people that write technical documentation for both software and hardware. And I feel like they're very part of our community. And they have a Slack channel, which I joined last week. And there's quite a bit of people there. And I feel like this would be a very nice community to be involved as well.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely need to engage. Yeah, quickly, Jerry.
Just very quickly, I forgot the most important thing. It's really first time we talked, Vint, you said we really should be talking about the future of writing. So this could run parallel with the future of text under the banner of future of writing, where people actually creating the future. That's just a suggestion, because it really then you could have both.
Yeah.
In some and it really, there's so many people and communities involved in this, with very active. So if you could really wake them up to the future of text, I think they're full of Engelbartians and Ted Nelson.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I will definitely talk to them. I'm presenting next week, so I look forward to that, and we'll be there tomorrow. But the one thing that we kind of started this on a little bit is the whole implementation, which is kind of also what you're highlighting, Jerry, is I've decided that I really need to push visual meta harder. And I put a tweet up today asking, is there a more robust way to have rich information robustly stored? It's kind of like a challenge, because I'm really sick and tired of link rots. I'm really sick and tired of documents, software formats disappearing. And PDF, for all its faults, there's so many important documents there that it will be supported in one way or another for the next couple of 100 years plus printed. So the discussion we've had in the weekly chats, which we discussed briefly in the beginning, there are other aspects of it that we can easily magically make on normal PDFs that can be used anywhere, that can also have magical things. For instance, imagine, Todd, that you read Mark Graham's article in the new book, and you realize that he said something much cleverer than you did in a section. So you, as an author, have special privileges for annotation. So you then go into your copy and you scratch out, like a pen, the bit that you don't like, and you say, look at what Mark wrote over here. This is the thing we should. And then in a very graphic way, you pull things together and you annotate and you communicate in the book. Because you are both authors, this then can be appended in future visual meta appendices at the end. So someone coming in reading the book, it's not like Amazon or Hypothesis, which are both great for their user groups. It's not like you will access anybody's annotation, but you can, let's say Jamie comes across Todd's article and sees some icon or whatever, and it says, Todd has annotated this book. Really? Okay. So not only do we get to see what you discussed, so I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, but also you can do things like your own binding of it. So you can say, these articles are not important, this is important, highlighting this, do whatever you want. And you can then share that binding with anybody. So your perspective gets in there. And that binding, it's still the entire document. So people can choose to unbind it at any time. Mr. Mark Graham.
You're muted. You're muted. We can't hear.
That I appreciate. Thank you. Sorry, I was just going to say I appreciate that. I put a link in here. I mean, with this, what we're dancing around a little bit is ubiquity, I think, of these services. When we talk about, metadata and fine, we can add metadata. There's tons of tools to add metadata to things, but how do you access that metadata? There's, don't even know like which tool to use for which particular document, et cetera. So I think we're about to see some change. The link I just shared is a recent GitHub contribution by an engineer who works on Chrome. He's a Google employee. And this follows on the recent addition in the version build 90 of Chrome of the click, drag, highlight, share feature. I don't know if any of you have seen or used that yet, but it's pretty cool. And there's a whole graveyard of about 80 different annotation projects over the last couple of decades that we can point to. But unless and until this is native within a browser, I think it's going to continue to be a difficult uphill battle. This in Chrome 90, you can click, drag, copy, and share, and the other person will get a link that then will highlight the selected text in the document. You don't need any other special tools. And I'm thinking it might even work in Firefox. I can't imagine Brave isn't going to follow on. Apple probably won't do it for a while. But that's just, I think, the nose under the tent. This document here in this GitHub repository, I encourage all of you to read it. This person is laying out really a lot of the promise and possibility of annotation. And I would not be surprised if in the coming months or small numbers of years or something, Google goes full in to annotation. And a lot of these barriers that we're talking about now are going to begin to slip away. Barriers of access and entry.
I greatly appreciate that link, and it looks, just skimming it, it looks very useful. However, in the interest of time and also in saving the world, I'm sick and tired of the web because it relies on DNS. DNS, if you don't pay the bill, everything is gone. You are saving it with your Internet Archive, so that's amazing. But I think that at some point we have to have an annotation that's actually in the document, that it gets written to it. So the example with you and Todd, it would be written as, it would be going back in the visual meta at the end of the document because you have special privileges. It's just one example of, I'm also really tired of information ghettos like CD-ROMs we had. Now we have websites that can do amazing things, but then that website goes down or that software doesn't work. We need to have a single substrate that can be printed out that has all of this, that will literally print it out, put it in a bank vault, in 1,000 years it's readable. Everything else in my world is a demo. Was that provocative enough?
Yeah.
This doesn't compute for me, and because the printing stuff out is even if you make the argument, well, you could OCR it somehow and get it back into computable form, the context may be long gone, and that's exactly why there has to be rewrite URLs in the Internet Archive, because those rewrites preserve context and deal with exactly the problem of losing.
They preserve some context.
Well, I think we should be paying a great deal of attention to this concept of context and the objects that we're talking about, the writings that we're talking about, in order to render these objects, and I don't mean just display them, but to interact with them. We need to understand their context. And I don't know that we have done enough to articulate context in order to allow even a consideration of preservation. What assumptions need to be in place, what properties need to be maintained in order for this object to be fully functional. And I don't think we even have a way of describing that at this point.
I think that's fair enough. And when we're looking at, like Mark Anderson going through hypertext journal conferences, even digital data can be a mess. But, look at a normal book. A normal book loses context the instant it's made, obviously. And the context is other books and that culture. I don't believe we can have all the context and metadata in the world, to say it like that, bound up in a digital object, but we need to have ways that it can be referenced and found. And when it comes to Mark Graham's comment here, DNS, the risks and challenges of DNS is not object-bound metadata, but what is wrong with having metadata on the same level as the data? Why should it be hidden away somewhere?
We're not, but let me suggest to you another vocabulary item here. Let me speak to what I will call the resolution space of a writing. Now let's take a book. It turns out that that books have components that are fully resolvable within the book. The table of contents, the index, all of those things are fully resolvable within the context of the book itself. The things that are not fully resolvable are all the references to things that are outside the book. So we might ask ourselves a question, how do we speak about resolution spaces, and how do we speak about preserving resolution spaces in writings that are not already contained within that writing? And I'm sure that I've just made up some words that probably somebody else has already had a different vocabulary for, but you can see what I'm groping for. It's all about context and resolution.
I can see where you're going, and I can see Mark Graham's writing a few things. Peter's raising his hand, but the thing is, we have 15 minutes left on this call. We have this call every month. If we're actually going to properly attack this particular issue, I think we need a specific format for it. Because in our monthly calls, it's who to invite, how to promote, how to do the student competition, how to have the format of the book. It's a lot of stuff to get done in an hour. And who is here changes a lot, which is absolutely wonderful. So if someone is interested in pushing more on the what format should the volume 2 of the book be, it would be really fantastic to have that on Circle and also Monday or Friday. And if you can come on one Monday, not the next, or on Friday, it really doesn't matter. It's completely open. But I have to admit, I feel it's quite stressful to go this deep, Vince, because you have a big brain, in such a time constraint to try to, in a way, solve the big problems all in one go. You know what I mean? And it seems like Mark Graham and I have both agreements and disagreements in very specific areas that could be fruitful for longer discussions. Any comments on that before Peter is handed the mic? Okay, Peter.
Okay, I think it's important for us to try to make the visual meta as self-documenting as possible. So that should extend to having a formal grammar associated with it, and also some formal semantics showing how that might relate to something, either in terms of an existing programming language that we assume is still going to be around in 1,000 years, or take it all the way out to lambda calculus and logical relational formats. But basically, you have to be able to find in physical hard copy everything that you'd know in order to be able to recreate the software infrastructure to make use of visual meta. Otherwise, we're too dependent upon people being able to find BibTeX systems and parsers and things that they might not be able to find otherwise. They only have to be like one volume that's referenced in anything using visual meta, but have one place where you could get all of the content that you need to be able to work from that physical printed volume to recreate the software infrastructure that you need to bootstrap making use of visual meta.
Yeah, Peter, that's an important point. And in the newer visual meta, that is actually included. And this is very much for community discussion, but there's a huge paragraph explaining in plain English what it is, which I think is really, really important. So if someone comes across a digital printed document in 1,000 years, they can say this tag means that, and we're doing this because of that. So whatever approach, yes, we need to look at the far distant future.
Well, Frode, just coming back to visibility, does anybody want to follow up on this NFT idea?
Would love to, and Raphael has already worked on some of this, so we're going to do some research and get back to you on that for sure. Absolutely, that's fantastic. So, Mark and Todd, you're both in a very related space and how to move forward with documents. And as you know, I'm passionate for visual meta, but I'm also passionate to drop it if there's something better. If it follows the criteria of being robust and rich. So if you guys want to have further discussions. These discussions are recorded, which I think is very useful. If you could join us on a Monday or Friday call, we can dedicate it to maybe one of you either doing a presentation or an argument or whatever. And then for us to hammer that together, that would be amazing. Because quite simply, in my mind, the future of text is something we have to invent that doesn't exist yet. And that could be a very useful frame for people to get that. The fact that we don't
that JSON
is just wonderful.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that JSON links that Yuri provided look very interesting. I think we should follow that project closely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, do you all have accounts on the Circle community thing? I think you do. It's just a really easy place to find links and so on. Mark Anderson pasted in here. Futureoftext.circle.so. For the Californians and so on here, when should we schedule, even if it's not that, should we just schedule a chat to really go into this issue? I mean, Mark, you have such real world experience in this work. I would really like to know why I disagree with you in some areas and why I agree with you in some areas. And I think if that's a recorded conversation, it could benefit others as well. Whoever finds everybody's so quiet, it's great. Or is it?
Yeah, the time zone between London and San Francisco is quite big, huh? To find a time that would fit both would be quite challenging. But it would be amazing to dive deeper into a lot of these things on the office hours, or even if it's another time, I would be happy to accommodate it as well.
Yeah, Peter?
Oh, another thought. It might be nice if every visual meta document had some magic number or symbol inside of it that could be searched so that you could find all the documents using visual meta. So imagine whatever form the future has, whether it'll be Google or maybe something will come and displace Google, we can assume that a full text search capability of digitized documents will exist. So if there was a unique sequence of symbols within all of our documents supporting visual meta that could be fed into that future search engine in 1,000 years, that would allow somebody to instantaneously marshal everything out there making use of visual meta.
That's interesting. Thank you. That makes sense. So Todd, you also have a very interesting real world perspective on these issues. Would you also be interested in a bit more community discussion on how we can take volume 2? Before I...
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the reason that I'm here. I think it's important to, like, in response to the comment just made about documents that contain visual meta, I think it's important that this works with all documents.
Yes.
And the linking happens with all documents. And there are a variety of systems that have been put into place and ideas and prototypes for robust permanent linking. So after the Zittrain article last week, I pointed there has been, permanent linking systems developed for scholarly communications using the Handle system and DOI, and a variety of other systems are using that. Herbert von de Sompel then piped in with his approach using called robust linking and using the Internet Archive. There's a lot of different interesting approaches here, but they usually involve kind of curated middlemen systems, middleware. The challenge is I don't know how a system can function without that kind of middle human curation, I guess is the best way to put it. There might be ways in which some automated systems can support that. But I think human curation is going to be critically important because humans are, breaking the curation path basically from time to time, removing things, moving things, and so even systems of persistent identification. Thanks, Raphael. I don't disagree. But it's sort of, how do we manage that? How do we manage the system?
Yeah.
And I don't know there's a good way to do it at scale without building in robustness or, a functioning middleware.
I think that makes sense. And before, Jerry, before you reply, I just wanted to make the thing of what I'm really arguing for now is we have this one thing and we're going to have another thing. So pretending this is the other thing. I think that because even now in Reader, we have advanced interactions, primitive, but advanced compared to others, where you can search the whole document. You should be able to search volume 1 and 2. You should choose whether you're reading volume 1 or volume 2 or volume 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why the notion of binding is so important. So you should be able to say, I want the edition that has everything or nothing or whatever. These are the really basic things that I really think we need to address. How the documents connect is one thing, but also how you have what is self-contained within the document, I think is something we as a community can really get our teeth into. Yeah, Jerry? You are muted and not in a soft singing way completely.
Yes. Sorry. So if I may just quickly respond, that's why I'm promoting what Fission is doing and the whole interplanetary file system, which basically content addressable. So the whole point of breaking links, it fixes that problem. This is the whole decentralized web. And that really means that you have any content, you got a permanent address. I mean, in fact, IPFS and similar systems are designed precisely to be a permanent memory for humanity.
Yeah.
And so I think, and just one more sentence, the whole point of Fission, that it gives you a web native storage, where the links will never break.
Right.
Worth checking out.
Yeah, Jerry, just because we have a few minutes, there are obviously two different issues. One issue is how documents connect, which is what you're talking about. And that is really, really important. But considering we're producing a book, I think we also need to decide on how can we, in the most robust way, make the book as advanced and interesting and possible as we can. So that's why, staying within the book. And Mark Graham asks, is Visual Meta compliant with W3 standards for annotations? No, because we haven't done anything with that yet, but we could absolutely do that. Vint and I and Ismail did a presentation on Visual Meta in a more general thing about 2 weeks ago, where there had been Dublin Core had come up. How does Visual Meta work with Dublin Core? And the answer to that, which is just put it in literally, just this is the Dublin Core, this is the other bit. How we would do annotations, I have no idea. All Visual Meta is saying there's stuff at the back of the book that can be parsed. That's all it is.
I hear you. I am sorry. I just diving into this last few minutes. I've been checking out Author and I've been checking out Reader, and they're beautiful and great and it's wonderful. And I don't know. I've just seen a lot of these projects over the decades, frankly, kind of like get a lot of enthusiasm and then kind of die down. Why? Because they don't really have real world adoption at scale. And that's a requirement, I think, for longevity and inclusion and everything. So I know that would be a characteristic of whatever it is if there's a you, whatever, work on to really try to achieve. And one of the ways of doing that is open standards, lots of clients, lots of different examples, lots of opportunities for people to plug in. And right now, I don't know, I don't mean to be overly critical, but I'm not seeing that here.
No, you're right. Just spend the last few minutes on this. My utter failure as a software developer in getting my products to mass adoption is an issue for me. I've spent a ton of money on it and it's good software. The reviews are fantastic. Marketing is more expensive than I can make. And that's totally fine. I absolutely have I appreciate your compliment and I appreciate the issue, but I'm not pushing my software here. And when it comes to Visual Meta, all I'm saying, and even if you completely change the name, as long as at the end of a document, you write what it is, right? That is all. Right now with a PDF, there is in normal use hardly ever any meta even in the PDF thing because it's layered too much, as you guys know very well. But I just think that in a normal book, in one of the first pages, you have the copyright page, that stuff. Why can't we have that in a normal digital document at the back? I mean, in this one, for the future of text, it's tiny, it's just 2 pages. And it really doesn't matter what the format is, as long as it's human understandable, because then any software, any coder can make it useful. So that's what I'm really, really pushing. And it shouldn't matter what the software is, just say how the document is. Yeah, thanks, Vince. We're closing anyway. Good to see you. Raphael and I will get in touch with some of the issues we raised soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So, Mark, yeah, I get you. But the reason for author and reader is proof of concept. I'm not saying that people should rush out and download the free software. It has to be much bigger than that. ACM has to put in the digital library as an option when you download. It has to be people. Hey, if you find a better solution for rich metadata in a robust way, I'm very happy to go on holiday and take pictures of my son. I'm only pushing like mad on this because I'm not saying it really done, but it really needs to be soon. We get to a point where someone gets a document and someone says, excuse me, you've sent me a dumb document. This document doesn't know what it is, who wrote it, how it's formatted, it knows nothing. How am I supposed to process this document? That's kind of the dream and the challenge.
Peter has his hand up. I have a response, but Peter has his hand up.
Yeah, anything quick, Peter? Since I talk to you twice a week, so you're more involved than Graham at this point. Yeah.
Actually, it's just sort of covered. So I think we're good.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, Mark.
But just going to say, it's interesting. Once again, I've said this before, but 2 ways. A, you can edit the document. B, you can add metadata to the document. I'm experimenting with both methods. I don't think the first method scales. There's a whole lot of problems with it. The second method's got challenges as well. I don't think an indictment of DNS is sufficient to kill the viability of the second method. And with regard to what you've done so far, my invitation is to try to do both. So, I would love to see an expression of the visual meta methodology externally accessible. And so when you talk about, and I think about, like, I have failed, you said, in adopting, the product. I think you're trying to solve the wrong problem. The problem to solve is the adoption of the methodology, not the adoption of a product. And
I agree.
For me, it's all about partnerships. It's like, knock on the door of Apple, Google, Adobe, etc. But also in the case, and I'm just going to I'll finish with this. One of the reasons I started working with Wikipedia, like I said, it's a soft belly. I mean, it's right there. You can squish on it, and it's like it's accessible, and it scales. So.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a physical meeting and this was not COVID time, this is the point where I would give you a hug, because I completely agree. I think that
we can still do that.
Yeah, we can do that. Because the key for me is so simple. A document needs to know what it is in whatever format. However, is that enough? No, not even remotely. How it's connected and having external, yes, super hyper important. Absolutely. And yes, it is not about selling the product. That's just my vision of it, of how it can be done. And yes, there are, thanks to Vint, there are 2 major organizations that I'm in dialogue with now. We're looking at using visual meta for their products, because how to deal with it is completely, utterly open source. I can't really talk about who that is because, whatever. But yes, it is about making it open. It is about making community standard. It is about the standard, blah, blah, blah. Anderson?
I just bridge back to the sort of thing that bridges both the sort of metadata and the annotation. This was my horrific experience of working in, as it happens, a UK government ministry, but I'm sure it could probably be in any first world nation. It's just the blind leading the blind, in terms of people are no further forward in sort of this century than working on faux paper on screen. No metadata, that's a somebody else's job. But we don't have secretariat anymore downstairs. The person who used to live at the back of the stack who knew where everything was, that's not there. No one records that this, Google Documents can give you any version, any letter that was typed. It can't tell you which edit was of relevance, which was the one that was signed off. And that aspect, curatorian, having worked as a young public servant on old-fashioned paper documents and understanding about minutes and papers and the tracking of it, I certainly wouldn't want to get back there, but it was a damn sight better, actually, funnily enough, than our current systems now. We're just not keeping any data because everyone thinks it's somebody else's job to do, or it's magically done behind the curtain by something called IT, but they never talk to them.
But before I hand the mic back to you, Peter, because I also have to wrap up here. Todd and Mark, the kind of fantasy situation here, considering the organizations you guys are with, is to develop something that works for this. That is, let's not make perfect the enemy of the good, or whatever that expression is. Something really basic that is really useful. The software that I develop, Reader is free, Author is free. People can pay me if they want for a little add-on thing. I don't care. These are just demonstrations. If I can help someone else make the same utility or more, I will do that. I just think, to be honest, I think this is a species extinction level issue of how we deal with our text. And the fact that, like Mark Anderson just said, we're essentially having scanned JPEGs. There's hardly anything there. It scares the living bejesus out of me. I don't want my 4-year-old son to grow up in a world with dumb documents, and I know you guys don't either. And the fact that we don't agree how to do it, who cares? That just means more brain power has to be used. And we're building a community of people who, in various aspects, passionately care about making documents, let's use the word smart. So anyway, we need to finish the call. Whoever wants to join any of the Monday, Friday calls, we can even move them. For me, it's between 4 and 5. It's really easy. I can go later. I'm sure Mark and other people here can go later too. It's not a problem. But let's just use the Circle community thing to coordinate. Yeah?
Okay, the last thought I wanted to put in was that in looking at the adoption of new standards and formats, what seems to be key is having the website for it say, there's a library available for whichever programming language you love. Here's the JavaScript library, here's the Java library, here's the Rust library, here's the D library, here's the C library, C++, et cetera, et cetera. Go through the whole list of prominent languages and note that any data created by using any of these API calls in these libraries is going to be compatible across all the languages. And that's something that really gets developers' blood flowing.
Yeah, I look forward to working with you on that. I have to go now. I just got another call. You guys are wonderful. This is difficult, and I hope we can produce something beautiful together. Anything else before we jump off? All right, thanks, guys. See you.
Great week. See you Friday for whoever's coming then.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.